November 24, 1944. Over the Philippine Sea, 27,000 feet. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress trembles as it cuts through a river of cold wind. Inside the pressurized cabin, Major Robert "Bob" Morgan wipes a sheet of frost from the edge of his side window. His gloved fingers buzz with engine vibration. For right are 3350 radials pounding like war drums across the sky. Ahead lies nothing but darkness. Behind him, 1,500 miles of ocean stretching back to Tinian, the new American fortress in the Mariana Islands. Morgan exhales, long and slow. Tonight is no rehearsal. Tonight, the plane the Japanese High Command once mocked as too large, too slow, and too fragile is about to prove exactly how wrong they were. Tokyo, the same hour. Inside an underground command room, beneath the Imperial General Headquarters, Lieutenant General Shizuchi Tanaka listens as his staff officers trade dismissive remarks. The American bomber? Impossible. No aircraft can reach the home islands from the south. One insists. Even if it could, our air defenses will shut it down. Another adds, tapping a cigarette on the table. They speak with confidence born from years of propaganda. Confidence that Japan's defensive ring across the Pacific was still intact, that American industry could not possibly produce a bomber capable of crossing an entire ocean. But above the Pacific, Morgan and his crew hear none of this. They hear only the deep, steady growl of the Superfortress, and the faint ticking of time before Japanese cities will learn a new word: strategic bombing. The flight that should have been impossible. From the nose blister, Bombardier Captain Raymond Zielinski watches stars shimmer like fragments of broken glass. Turbulence slaps the fuselage. Oxygen flows cold into their masks. Distance to initial point? Morgan asks through the intercom. 4 hours, Navigator Charlie Levy replies. He traces a pencil across the chart, an expanse so wide that, a year earlier, no Allied commander believed a bomber could cross it in combat. And yet here they are. The B-29 was built for precisely this. A 141-foot wingspan, pressurized cabin, remote-controlled gun turrets, and engines powerful enough to drag 10 tons of bombs across distances previously reserved for naval fleets. America had gambled billions to create a machine capable of reaching Japan without landing on Chinese soil. The Japanese command believed such a thing physically impossible. Tonight, that belief evaporates with every mile. Tinian, the island that changed the war. 6 hours earlier, the airstrip on Tinian roared like a forge. Rows of B-29s, bright under floodlights, rolled forward, each carrying 500-pound and incendiary payloads. Ground crews shouted over the engines. Number 3 is overheating. Keep her rolling. Don't let those cylinders cook. Morgan had watched the runway vanish beneath them, the Superfortress clawing upward into the humid night. Every pilot knew the truth. The R-3350 engines were temperamental monsters. Some caught fire. Some simply failed midair. But tonight luck held. At altitude, with the ocean stretching endlessly beneath them, the men felt the war narrowing toward a single point. A point named Tokyo. Japan's nightmare begins without warning. Inside the Japanese capital, few look upward. Families cook evening meals in small wooden houses. Children practice kana characters by candlelight. The streets glow with faint lantern light. Rationing has dimmed the city. Tokyo still believes distance protects it. But in the freezing sky, Levy finishes recalculating wind drift. Major, he calls, we're dead on course. If Tanaka's boys are awake, they'll see us soon. Morgan smirks behind his oxygen mask. Let them look. He knows the truth. Japan does not yet understand the size of the shadow now crossing the Pacific. The first rumble of a storm born thousands of miles away. A storm carried on the wings of a bomber that should never have existed. and that Japan's commanders insisted could not reach their homeland. But the Superfortress keeps coming. Unseen. Unstoppable. Minutes ticking down toward a night that will change the war forever. November 24, 1944, 2:17, Tokyo Bay Radar Station. A cold drizzle taps against the steel roof of the early warning post at Kii, just west of Tokyo. Inside, a young radar operator, Corporal Takashi M. Suddenly, a faint blip appears at the outer edge of the scope. Morimoto frowns. He adjusts the tuning dial. The become. "Captain, you should look at this." Captain Kinshir strides over, expecting another false echo. Their equipment, an aging Type 2 radar unit, often misreads weather fronts. But this is no storm. Watanabe's expression hardens. "These headings, they're coming from the southeast." He pauses. "That's impossible. No Allied aircraft can approach from that direction." But the signal keeps advancing, steady, deliberate, at exactly the speed of a heavy bomber. Watanabe reaches for the phone. "Central Command, this is Kyoto Station. We have unidentified aircraft inbound to the capital. Repeat, inbound to the capital." On the other end of the line, the response is laughter. Tokyo's officers still believe the Mariana Islands are far outside any bomber's reach. But up in the freezing dark, the B-29 crews now see the faint glow of the Japanese coastline rising over the horizon. A machine too far ahead of its time. Back aboard Morgan's Superfortress, frost creeps along the inside of the plexiglass nose. Bombardier Zelensky leans closer to the Norden site. "Target area approaching in 30 minutes, he says. His voice stays calm, too calm. The men know this is the first major strike against Tokyo since the Doolittle raid in 1942. But this time, they aren't coming home to a carrier deck. They're crossing the entire Pacific and back again. Behind Morgan, Flight Engineer Ed Fitzgerald listens to the engines with the precision of a surgeon. "Number 2 is running hot," he warns. "How hot?" "Hot enough that if Japan doesn't kill us, this engine might try." Morgan nods, but keeps the nose pointed north. They all understood the machine they flew. The B-29 was brilliant, innovative, and temperamental, like flying a cathedral built around 4 powder keg engines. But it was also the only aircraft on Earth capable of doing this. In Tokyo, the atmosphere shifts from arrogance to disbelief as more radar stations confirm the same readings. General Tanaka's aide rushes into the operations bunker. "Sir!" "Multiple contacts approaching the capital. Large aircraft." Tanaka slowly removes his glasses. "From where?" "The southeast, sir." A silence colder than the November air fills the room. Tanaka knows exactly what lies to the southeast. The Mariana Islands, recently captured by American Marines in a brutal campaign. He had dismissed the reports that America was building massive airfields on Tinian, Saipan, and Guam. He had mocked the idea of a super bomber. Everyone had. But the radar does not lie. She is. "So, they have finally come." Over Tokyo Bay, the moment of realization. Clouds tear open as Morgan's aircraft, the lead in a formation of over 100 B-29s, descends toward its bombing altitude. Below them, the great sprawl of Tokyo materializes through the haze. Navigated. No one cheers. They are too stunned by the sight. Tokyo, asleep under thin trails of chimney smoke, unaware of the iron avalanche approaching. Morgan keys the intercom. "Gunners, keep your eyes sharp. Fighters may be waiting." In reality, Japan's best interceptors, the Kawasaki Ki-61 and Mitsubishi J-2M, are scrambling too late. The B-29's altitude and speed have caught them by surprise. At the tail gun position, Sergeant Harold McCaffrey scans the sky. Nothing yet. He mutters. That's the part that scares me. On the ground, a city slowly looks up. The first Tokyo residents notice an odd sound around 2:45. Not the usual drone of distant training aircraft. Not the hum of coastal wind. A deep, rolling thunder, steady, mechanical, growing louder each second. A farmer in Shinagawa pauses mid-step. A streetcar conductor leans out of his cabin. Children sleeping in wooden homes stir as windows begin to rattle. A few step outside into the cold night. One points upward. High above the clouds, like faint silver ghosts illuminated by moonlight, massive shapes move in formation. People stare in confusion. No one believes what they are seeing. Because Japan had been assured, repeatedly, confidently, that such a thing was impossible. Tonight, impossibility has arrived, and it carries bombs. 2:56, over northern Tokyo. The Superfortress shudders as Morgan lowers the aircraft to its bombing run altitude. Inside the cabin, the crew hears only oxygen hissing, metal groaning, and the electric hum of the Norden bomb site coming alive. Bombardier Zelensky inhales sharply. Major, I've got visual contact with the industrial sector. Bright reflections off the river. Wind drift nominal. Morgan steadies the plane, gripping the yoke with both hands. Zelensky's voice becomes a monotone rhythm, calm, methodical, lethal. Beginning final approach. 10 seconds to release. Below them, the Tokyo factories, Mitsubishi engines, Nakajima aircraft components, military assembly yards, sleep under blackout conditions. No alarms yet. Not to be. Zelensky marks the final correction. Bombs? Away. The belly doors open with a metallic roar. A chain of 500-pound bombs tumbles into the dark, slicing through the air like falling stars. The plane lurches upward, freed of several thousand pounds. 5 seconds later, the night erupts. Tokyo learns the sound of a new war. Shockwaves ripple across the city. Workers sleeping near factory dormitories bolt upright as the earth trembles beneath them. A blinding orange bloom reflects off river canals. Then another, and another. By the third explosion, air raid wardens are already sprinting through the streets screaming, "Air raid! Air raid!" Sirens howl to life, too late, too scattered, too unprepared. A civilian woman clutching her baby bursts through her sliding door, staring upward at the faint silhouettes drifting across the moonlit sky. "Baka na," she whispers. "This cannot be." But it is. The impossible bomber is real. Anti-aircraft fire lights the sky. At 3:02 a.m., Tokyo's anti-aircraft batteries finally react. Searchlights stab upward, dancing frantically across the clouds. On Morgan's intercom, the tail gunner shouts. Searchlights coming alive. 3 o'clock, low. Then a second voice. Flak. Give it up. Black puffs burst around them, shrapnel pinging off the fuselage like hail on steel. Morgan keeps the aircraft level, eyes fixed forward. Hold steady. He growls. Ray, give me a good path out of here. Zelensky scans the targets disappearing beneath the smoke. We hit the engine works clean. Secondary fires spreading. Below, Japanese firefighters scramble into the chaos. They have trained for fires caused by earthquakes, by accidents, by lightning storms. Not for this. Never for this. Imperial Command watches its confidence crumble. General Tanaka listens as frantic reports crackle through the operations bunker. Multiple factories burning. Enemy bombers not descending, flying at impossible altitude. Fighters cannot intercept. Climb performance insufficient. Thin. He had once laughed at American propaganda claiming a bomber could fly pressurized at 30,000 feet. He had ridiculed the idea that the U.S. could transport entire air fleets to islands barely captured months earlier. Now, a nation built on the illusion of invulnerability is watching that illusion die in real time. A staff officer turns pale. "General, if they can reach Tokyo from the Marianas, they can strike anywhere." Tanaka doesn't reply, because he already knows what this means. Japan's defensive perimeter, years in the making, has just been bypassed in a single night. At 3:11 a.m., the first Japanese interceptors finally claw their way into altitude. Key 61 Tony. In one cockpit, Sergeant Kunichi Ken Okamura scans desperately for the massive bombers. He sees nothing but contrails illuminated by flashes of flak. "Where are they?" he demands. "Above us." His wingman answers. "Too high." The B-29s cruise at over 30,000 feet, far beyond the reach of most Japanese planes burdened with war-worn engines and insufficient turbochargers. Okamura forces his aircraft upward, but the engine coughs, sputters, and begins to lose power. He slams his fist against the dashboard. "We cannot even touch them." He watches helplessly as the American formation arcs south. Bombs already dropped, victory already achieved. For the first time, Japanese pilots feel something they had never felt against the U.S. in 1942 or 1943. Powerlessness. Morgan's crew sees the first flames. From the blister window, Navigator Levy gazes down. Tokyo's. Not triumphantly. Not with celebration. With a quiet, sobering realization that the war has crossed a threshold from which there is no return. In the distance, columns of flame rise, like glowing spires. Zelensky switches off the bomb sight and exhales. "That." Morgan nods, turning the Superfortress toward open water. But before they can escape, the sky erupts again. Not from bombs, but from a sudden bloom of searchlights locking onto the trailing B-29 in their formation. Gunners shout warnings. "Tomorrow." "Hang on." Enemy fighters coming in, finally awake. The Tokyo raid is not over. The nightmare, for both sides, is only beginning. 3:14 a.m. over southern Tokyo. The sky fractures into chaos. For the first time tonight, Japanese fighters close within range, shrieking upward through pillars of searchlight like arrows fired into the heavens. In the tail position of Morgan's B-29, Sergeant Harold McCaffrey tightens his grip on the twin .50 caliber Brownings. There! 6 o'clock low. Two Ridens climbing fast. The remote-controlled turrets pivot with mechanical precision, gun barrels tracking the approaching specks. Morgan hears McCaffrey's voice crackle. Permission granted. "Light him up!" McCaffrey squeezes the trigger. The aircraft vibrates as twin streams of tracer fire carve red arcs across the sky. The nearest Raiden veers away, its pilot stunned by the volume of defensive fire. But the second keeps climbing, suicidally, recklessly, its cannon spitting bright sparks. "Christ, he's coming straight at us!" McCaffrey yells. Zelensky braces against the plexiglass nose dome. Fitzgerald, eyes glued to engine gauges, mutters, "If they put a single cannon round in number 2, we're swimming home." At the last second, the Raiden stalls, engine choking thin air. It rolls sideways, passing harmlessly beneath the bomber. But dozens more fighters are rising behind it. Every mile now earned through fire. Flak intensifies as Morgan swings the B-29 south toward Tokyo Bay. The aircraft jolts violently. A black burst detonating just off the port wing. Damage on the left aileron, McCaffrey reports. But still responsive. Morgan. This is the part no lecture, no manual, no simulator can prepare a pilot for. Being at the center of hundreds of unseen guns, each one reaching for you. Fitz. Oil temp rising on number 2 again. She's pissed about the climb. Morgan answers without hesitation.
She'll hold. She doesn't get to quit before we're home.
Outside, the city falls behind them. Tokyo, its factories burning, its theory of invincibility shattered, shrinks into distant flickering amber. But the gauntlet is far from over. Japanese Fighter Command refuses to let go. At Atsugi Airfield, emergency flares hiss upward as more pilots scramble into cockpits warmed by hand-cranked generators. Among them is Lieutenant Da. He slams his canopy shut.
What altitude?
He barks.
Over 30,000. Still climbing.
Takata curses. His Ki-44 Tojo is fast, but its engine gasps for air above 29,000 feet. Still, he takes off, wheels lifting into a sky littered with smoke and burning factories. From his cockpit, he spots the faint glimmer of the American formation.
Even if I die,
he growls,
I will bring one of you down.
He pushes the throttle forward, the needle trembling near the red line. The engine whines like an animal in pain. He is still climbing when the B-29s arc toward open sea, just beyond reach. Inside Morgan's Superfortress, the cracks start showing. The cabin temperature drops sharply. Ice creeps along the metal seams.
Major,
Fitzgerald warns.
Pressure's fluctuating. Could be the fuselage took a piece of shrapnel.
Morgan nods. Alti.
Everyone check masks. Don't trust the gauges.
A hiss of oxygen floods the cabin. The tail gunner breaks the silence.
I can see one hit. B-29K-12, starboard formation. They're trailing smoke.
Morgan glances out his side window. A B-29 limps through the sky on 3 engines, glowing ember holes across its underside.
God help them,
Morgan whispers. He cannot slow down. Not here. Not with fighters still rising behind them. The formation presses on. Over the Pacific, freedom ahead, danger still beneath. By 3:47 a.m. the loss. The sea reappears. A cold, endless void of black waves far below. Most American aircraft feel relief here. Morgan does not. He knows Japanese naval fighters sometimes patrol this far out, and worse. They are nearing the most dangerous leg home. Engine endurance. Fitzger.
Number 2 cylinder head pressure rising too fast. If it hits 260, it won't.
Morgan cuts in, but the engineer's voice grows more urgent.
Major, if that one blows, we lose half our lift on that wing.
Zielinski turns sharply.
What are you saying, Fitz? I'm saying if number 2 dies, we may not make it back to Tinian.
No one speaks. Not for several seconds. Back in Tokyo, the smoke from the engine plant stretches for miles, rising into the dawn. Civilians gather in stunned silence. Some hold buckets of water. Some clutch children. Some yes.
How did they reach us? Where did they come from? Is this the beginning?
At Imperial Headquarters, Tanaka stares at a wall map of the Pacific. His officers stand motionless behind him.
The Marianas,
he murmurs.
So that is their new dagger.
No one speaks, because they all understand what this means. Japan is no longer protected by distance, no longer shielded by ocean. A new war has begun, one Japan is not prepared to fight. Morgan still has 1,400 miles to go. The B-29's engines pound relentlessly. The cabin vibrates. The men breathe cold oxygen through dry masks, muscles aching from hours of tension. But the mission is not survival alone. It is proof that America can strike the heart of the empire at will. Charlie Levy checks the chart.
Major, in 20 minutes we hit the point of no return.
Tomorrow.
We're past it already, Charlie.
He looks ahead, toward nothing but night, wind, and the long road home. The Japanese. Now Morgan must prove the second half, that it can return from this impossible mission. Behind them, Tokyo smolders. Ahead of them, the Pacific waits. And over every mile, the Superfortress strains under the weight of a war that has just changed forever. For 12 a.m., 200 miles southeast of Japan, the formation has thinned. Some B-29s drift miles apart, navigating alone by dead reckoning and moonlight. Some struggle at reduced power, their engines coughing under the strain of altitude and damage. Morgan's aircraft holds steady, but barely. Inside the flight deck, condensation drips from the ceiling, forming tiny beads on oxygen hoses. Each drip reminds the crew they are still flying in a fragile pressure vessel. One bullet, one crack, one unlucky weld away from catastrophic decompression. Fitzgerald murmurs again over the intercom, voice dry from recycled oxygen.
Number 2 cylinder pressure, climbing again. Major, she wants to quit.
Morgan's reply is a whisper.
She'll live. She has to.
But even he knows machines don't obey hope. The Pacific below, as empty as death itself. Charlie Levy unfolds the latest celestial fix. He checks the stars through the Astrodome, Orion to port, Cassiopeia faint behind thin cirrus clouds. He makes quick calculations, pencil scratching over a chart stained with sweat and engine grease. How bad?
Morgan asks.
15 degrees off course. At this drift rate, fuel may not get us home.
The Pacific is vast. The margin for error is razor thin. A B-29 ditching at night leaves little chance of survival. Crew trapped in harnesses, aircraft sinking in under 60 seconds.
With McCaffrey's voice comes back from the rear turret.
Boys, if this crate goes down, someone tell my wife I died facing west, not running away.
His attempt at humor earns a thin, grateful laugh from the crew. The weather ahead turns against them. At 5:03 a.m., the radar operator, Sergeant Bill Renner, speaks for the first time in nearly an hour.
Major, I've got storm cells stitching together about 70 miles ahead. Looks nasty.
Morgan presses his lips together. They cannot go around. They cannot climb above. They must push through or risk fuel starvation.
Strap in tight,
he orders.
This is going to be rough.
The bomber plunges into clouds that swallow the moonlight whole. Immediately, turbulence thrashes the aircraft, rattling ammunition belts in the turrets. A violent downdraft slams them downward. Loose equipment jumps from the floor. The wings groan.
Altitude dropping,
Levy shouts. Tender. F. T. Tender. If she blows, she blows. Keep feeding her fuel.
Lick. They are flying a cathedral through a storm. A fragile one. On Tinian, men wait for shadows to return. At Northfield, dozens of B-29s are still unaccounted for. On the flight line, ground crews stand beside fuel trucks, radios, and ambulances. They watch the horizon the way families watch a hospital doorway. Lieutenant Marvin Sills, an intelligence officer, checks his wristwatch.
They should be showing up soon,
he mutters. Beside him, a sergeant shakes his head.
Not with that distance. Not with the weather blowing in from the north.
But everyone understands. If the B-29s don't return, the Marianas experiment is over.
TH.
They wait, and hope, and listen for the faint growl of engines that may never return. Back in the air, a crew holds its breath. Inside Morgan's cockpit, the storm finally loosens its grip. They emerge into calmer air, but the aircraft is wounded. Fitzgerald reads the gauges again.
Morgan lets out a slow breath.
Good. She doesn't get to die until we're home.
Then Levy's voice breaks in. Quiet, tense, carrying a weight no one wants to hear.
Major, our fuel estimate just crossed the line. If our headwinds hold, we'll have 20 minutes of fuel on landing.
Zielinski runs a hand across his face.
Morgan doesn't flinch.
Then we land blind. Or we ditch close enough for the Navy to scoop us up.
He leans forward, eyes fixed on the horizon.
We didn't come 1,500 miles to die inside of home.
A lone B-29 falls behind. At 5:36 a.m., McCaffrey radios from the tail.
Major, K-12 dropped out of formation completely. She's losing altitude fast.
Morgan glances over his shoulder. A faint silhouette, a crippled B-29, falls away into the dark, its engines flickering.
Radio them.
Morgan orders.
Works.
Static. Then a faint, broken voice.
Losing power. Ditching. Tell command.
A reminder that for all its power, the B-29 is still mortal. And tonight, the Pacific is hungry. The first hint of dawn and hope. At 6:02 a.m., a thin band of gold appears on the horizon, painting the clouds in pale light. Levy spots it first.
Major, that's sunrise, which means we're approaching the latitude of the Marianas.
McCaffrey sighs with relief.
About damn time.
But Morgan doesn't ease the controls. Not yet. Not until he sees land.
Stay sharp.
He reminds them.
Daylight makes us easier to spot. If any Japanese float fighters are out here.
They all know the rest.
They made it this far.
Through flak. Through fighters. Through storms. Through failing engines. Tokyo is behind them. Tinian lies ahead.
But Dista
and the Superfortress must fly every remaining mile on sheer will and thinning fuel.
6:18 a.m. over the western Pacific. The B-29 vibrates with a subtle new rhythm, an unnerving tremor that tells the crew the engines are growing tired. Fitzgerald taps the pressure gauge.
Major, number 3's oil pressure is dipping now.
Tomorrow.
Keep her fed. We only need 90 more minutes.
90 minutes. A lifetime. Or a heartbeat. Levy double-checks the drift. The stars have vanished into daylight, turning navigation into a battle against uncertainty.
We'll be on Tinian's approach vector soon,
he says.
But headwinds are worse than expected. We're losing another 3 minutes of fuel per hour.
Zielinski's head rests against the cold metal of the nose blister.
At this point, I'd kill for a tailwind. Or a miracle.
They all would. Far ahead, a speck of hope. At 6:41 a.m., Bill Renner, the quiet radar operator, suddenly straightens.
Major, I've got something.
4.
Japanese patrol? No, sir. A fixed echo, large landmass, bearing 227 degrees.
Levies due.
That's Tinian. Has to be.
The men. McCaffrey in the tail lets out a long whistle.
Boys, we're going home.
But Morgan does not relax. Not yet.
Let's not celebrate until wheels are on the ground.
He glances at the fuel gauges. 2 tanks nearly dry. A third draining faster than predicted. They are threading the thinnest needle of their lives. At Northfield, dawn reveals anxious faces turned skyward. A faint sound ripples across the humid air. An engine roar, deep, distant, unmistakable. A lookout sprints toward the command post. R.
Officers and ground crews rush to the runway's edge. Marvin Sills lowers his binoculars and whispers.
Dear God, they actually made it.
One by one, silver shapes emerge from the dawn. Some missing panels, some trailing smoke, some limping on 3 engines. Cheers erupt from the ground crews. But joy mixes with heartbreak.
Empty.
Gaps in the returning formation mark where aircraft vanished into the sea or the flames over Tokyo. War gives victory with one hand and takes men with the other. Morgan. Inside the cockpit, the tone shifts again as Fitzgerald's voice cracks through the intercom.
Major, we just hit our final reserve. After this, we're dry.
Morgan keeps the descent shallow to conserve fuel.
Levy, give me the new ETA. 28 minutes to runway threshold.
Fuel? Fitzgerald exhales slowly.
29 minutes.
No one breathes. For the next half hour, they will fly a race where the finish line moves and the clock does not. Over Saipan, a city of craters and ghosts. At 7:07 a.m., they pass over Saipan, its ridgeline still scarred from the battles earlier that year. Burned-out tanks resemble rusted animal carcasses. The beaches still hold fragments of landing craft. Zelensky stares down at the island.
Hard to believe people fought over every inch of that.
McCaffrey answers softly.
Hard to believe we're flying over it in a fortress with wings.
Levy interrupts gently.
Tinian should be visible soon.
Morgan adjusts trim, keeping altitude steady. Below them, the waters shimmer in the rising sun. Fuel, dangerously low. Engines, hot but stable. Home, close enough to imagine, but not yet real. The final miles, a sound no crew ever forgets. At 7:19 a.m., Fitzgerald's voice erupts over the intercom.
Major, we just lost feed pressure on tank 2. She's running dry.
Morgan,
how many tanks left? 1, and it's bleeding fast.
They have minutes, perhaps less. Morgan lowers the nose, committing to descent.
Everyone, secure positions. We're landing heavy, fast, and on fumes.
The crew straps in. The B-29 groans as altitude drops from 10,000 to 7,000 to 5,000 feet.
Tinian airstrip in sight.
A roar of relief fills the cabin. But they're not safe. Not yet. Tinian Tower, a critical decision. In the control tower, a controller grabs his microphone.
Superfortress 3-1, you are cleared to land. Be advised, crosswind at 11 knots. Morgan, Tinian Tower, 3-1, negative go-around capability. We're landing on first attempt. Confirm runway clear.
The tower freezes. A go-around is standard for any unstable approach. But Morgan cannot climb again. Not with empty tanks.
Runway is clear.
The controller finally says,
Godspeed.
The descent of a giant. The landing gear extends with a heavy clunk. Morgan's hands tighten around the yoke.
Ian. Steady, steady.
The ground rises fast. Zelensky grips the seat frame. Fitzgerald holds his breath. McCaffrey stares through the tail glass as the runway rushes toward them.
Come on, baby,
Morgan whispers to his aircraft.
Don't quit on me now.
The B-29 hurtles downward. Wings trembling. Engine sputtering. Fuel gauges nearly touching zero. Touchdown. The wheels slam onto the runway, tires screeching. Morgan reverses props, fighting to slow the massive bomber before it overruns the strip. When the aircraft finally rolls to a stop, the cockpit fills with stunned silence. Then Fitzgerald says,
Major, all 4 engines just flamed out.
Not from damage, from lack of fuel. They made it. By seconds.
The
ground crews swarm the bomber, some cheering, some crying, some touching the bullet holes as if verifying the aircraft is real. Morgan removes his oxygen mask and breathes warm island air. Zelensky steps onto the runway, legs shaking.
We did it,
he murmurs.
But God help Tokyo when they come back with incendiaries.
Behind them, the sky brightens. More B-29s land. Some do not. But one truth settles across Tinian. Japan is now within reach. Permanently. The impossible has become routine. And the empire that believed distance would save it has just learned that distance no longer exists.
Later that morning, Tokyo, November 24, 1944. The fires have thinned, but smoke still clings to the sky like a shroud. A gray haze drifts through the bombed districts, settling on rooftops, alleys, and factory grounds. Workers wearing cloth masks sift through rubble, trying to understand how a city once thought untouchable was struck from a sky so distant it might as well have been another planet.
It wasn't carrier planes. It wasn't China. These came from nowhere.
A supervisor shakes his head.
No, they came from too far. Farther than planes can fly.
Yet the proof lies in the craters. The unmistakable signature of 500-pound bombs, dropped from an altitude so high that many civilians never even heard the aircraft above them. Near the Imperial Palace district, ash falls like snow onto the moat's still water. Tokyo's nightmare has begun, and the Japanese high command knows it. Inside Imperial Headquarters, a humiliation they cannot hide. General Tanaka stands before a board of operations officers. Maps are unfurled across a long table. Each one shows the same horrifying truth. The Mariana Islands sit perfectly within the B-29's combat radius, even with headwinds, even with mechanical issues. And one colonel, pale and shaken, finally speaks.
General, the range calculations we received last year were wrong.
Tanaka corrects him quietly.
No, our assumptions were wrong. We assumed the Americans could not solve the problems of long-range aviation. We assumed our island perimeter would hold. We assumed the B-29 was exaggeration.
He yelled.
And now Tokyo is burning because of assumptions.
Around the room, silence hangs like humidity before a typhoon. No one dares speak the thought forming in every mind. If they can fly 1,500 miles tonight, what will they bring next month? Next year? The pilots of the rising sun, pride shaken to the core. At Atsugi Airfield, Lieutenant Takata walks the length of the runway, helmet dangling from his hand. Mechanics swarm over battered J-2MS, Key 44s, and Key 61s. Some aircraft barely made it back. Some. Takata stops beside his smoking Tojo. The engine cowl glows faintly from overheating during the desperate climb.
Sir, we could not reach their altitude.
Takata Pu.
No engine in Japan can. That is not your failure.
He looks west, toward the distant sea where the B-29s vanished hours before.
They fight a different kind of war, one we were never prepared for.
The civilian front, fear like Japan has never known. In the districts of Oda, Meguro, and Shinagawa, families. Emergency workers extinguish fires still glowing under collapsed beams. A mother wraps her son in a blanket. He asks,
"Why didn't the army stop them?"
She has no answer. The government has long promised that the homeland would never be touched. That Japan's divine spirit, geography, and military prowess formed an unbreakable shield. But now, mothers and children have seen American bombers with their own eyes. And the whispered question spreads.
If they reached us once, will they come back?
The answer will arrive sooner than they can imagine. Tinian. The hard questions begin. Back on Tinian, Morgan's crew gathers outside their aircraft, still trembling from exhaustion. The hull is riddled with shrapnel scars. Black soot streaks the engine nacelles. The tires are worn nearly bald. A squadron commander approaches, clipboard in hand. And
Morgan removes his cap and wipes sweat from his brow.
We came close to ditching. How close?
Fitzgerald points toward the 4 silent engines.
We flamed out after stopping.
The commander lets out a low whistle.
You'll get the presidential unit citation for this one.
Morgan shakes his head.
I don't care about medals. Just give my crew some sleep.
But as he starts to walk away, the commander adds,
Morgan, you were the first wave. Once we adjust tactics, once we figure out the winds, we'll be sending a lot more. Tender.
More than 100. More than the single strike they barely survived? The commander nods grimly.
And next time, we're not carrying high explosives. We're carrying incendiaries.
Zelensky turned sharply.
Incendiaries? On Tokyo? Not just Tokyo.
The commander replies.
Every major Japanese city.
The implications land like a physical blow. Tonight was only the beginning. Washington, D.C., a victory with calculated purpose. Thousands of miles away, analysts in the Pentagon pore over radio intercepts, bomb damage assessments, and pilot debriefs. One officer circles Tokyo on a map and states what everyone already suspects.
Japan has no answer to a bomber that can fly from the Marianas. For the first time, we can strike their war industry at its core.
Another adds.
And once the firebombing campaign begins, their wooden cities won't stand a chance.
The coldness of it chills even the officers in the room. But this is total war. And the B-29 is the instrument designed to end it. Tokyo, a final glimpse into the consequence. As evening falls, the first newspapers hit the streets. Headlines read,
Enemy aircraft attack Tokyo. Damage reported in industrial zones. American superbombers believed involved.
Citizens crowd around bulletin boards, reading every line.
ASH. If they can cross an ocean, nothing can stop them.
A teenage boy clenches his fists.
We'll shoot them down next time.
But his father places a hand on his shoulder.
No, son. Next time, there won't be 100 planes. There will be hundreds.
In the distance, smoke continues to rise, thin, dark, and endless. It is the shape of the future.
December 1944, 1 week after the first Tokyo raid. Japan's Wardy. The room smells faintly of smoke still drifting in from the bombed districts of Tokyo. A staff officer enters, trembling slightly as he delivers the newest intelligence.
American construction on Tinian continues at impossible speed. Sir, they've completed 4 runways. Each can support over 100 superfortresses.
The officers stare at the map. 4 massive airstrips carved into coral limestone, arranged like the teeth of a steel comb aimed directly at Japan. General Tanaka feels the weight settle on his shoulders. Tinian was not a single airfield. Tinian was an engine of destruction, built to erase an empire. He knows he must present a plan to the emperor soon. But what plan? What defense? What strategy stops an enemy that no longer needs to approach from the sea, or seize islands, or bargain with distance? The Americans have wings that reach across the world, wings that carry fire. And over the Marianas, the sky becomes an assembly line of war. In the weeks following the initial raid, the airfields of Tinian, Saipan, and Guam transform into one of the most astonishing logistical feats in military history. Crews line up in rows, working beneath the tropical sun. Mechanics tuning our 3350 engines with tools still hot from constant use. Armorers loading hundreds of incendiaries into open bomb bays. Pilots filling briefing tents. Naviga. On some mornings, over 250 B-29s roar into the air. A metal migrated? Morgan's crew watches this new rhythm unfold with a mixture of awe and dread. Zelensky says that,
remember when we thought one mission to Tokyo was impossible?
Fitzger. N.
But the truth is darker. 20 was conservative.
TH.
Japan's defense, a shield made of paper. At Atsugi and Yokosuka, the Japanese air forces struggled to recover. Engine shortages, fuel shortages, pilot shortages. Commanders demand altitude intercept capabilities, but engineers know the truth. Japan has no turbochargers capable of matching American technology. Their fighters suffocate at 30,000 feet.
We are sending arrows to kill thunder. The ground.
Every pilot knows the raids will grow larger. Every pilot knows the B-29s will return with new tactics. Lower altitudes, nighttime bombing, incendiaries that will turn wooden Japanese cities into pyres. Still, they vow to fight. Honor demands no less. But the Americans shift strategy, fire over steel. In March 1945, General Curtis LeMay arrives in the Marianas. His eyes are sharp, analyzing everything: the humidity, the wind patterns, the inefficiencies in crew procedures. LeMay's conclusion is brutal and simple. High-altitude bombing isn't breaking their industry fast enough. We go lower. We go at night. We burn them out. Morgan, hearing this during a briefing, feels his stomach tighten. Low-altitude runs? Over Tokyo? With incendiaries? He asks. The briefing officer nods. Tokyo is made of paper and wood. Incendiaries will do more damage than high explosives ever could. McCaffrey whispers, "Good evening." But war does not ask for mercy. Took. March 9, 1945. Morgan's crew climbs into their B-29 again, this time without high-altitude pressurization suits. They will fly at 5,000 to 7,000 feet, low enough to see the city lights directly. Below them, Tokyo glitters like a sea of lanterns. Then, the bomb bay doors open. Incendiaries fall by the tens of thousands, clattering onto rooftops before igniting with a hiss. The fire begins small, then grows, then joins other fires, then merges into a single, city-sized inferno as winds whip flames into towering cyclones. Morgan's crew watches in stunned silence. "I didn't think it would look like this," Levy whispers. Tokyo burns until dawn. Over 15 square miles of the city vanish in one night. The empire that once mocked the B-29 now fears even its shadow. The psychological breaking point. Through the spring of 1945, Japan endures. Firebombing of Osaka. Firebombing of Kobe. The destruction of over 60 cities. The collapse of industrial capacity. Each mission begins the same way. A line of giant bombers lifting into the sky from the same islands Japan once believed irrelevant, captured specks of land that now dictate the fate of the Pacific. A Japanese civilian in Nagoya writes in her diary, "We hear the sound of the Superfortress before we see it. And when we hear it, we know our city may not exist by morning. No coastal defense can stop them. No fighter can reach them. No government promise can reassure the people anymore. The empire's shield is shattered. The endgame, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the final blow." By summer, as Japan reels under the relentless firebombing, a new weapon arrives on Tinian. Strange devices guarded by military police. Mysterious teams in unmarked trucks. Specially modified B-29s known as the Silver Plate aircraft. Tomorrow, Zelensky asks, "What's in those bombs?" No one knows. No one is told. Then, on August 6th, the world learns the answer over Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki follows. The war's ending begins not with armies on plains or fleets at sea, but with B-29s taking off from the same runways Morgan first landed on, with empty fuel tanks and trembling hands. Japan's surrender becomes inevitable, and the bomber once mocked as impossible becomes the symbol of a new age. Outcome. In the years after the war, historians would trace the turning point in Japan's downfall back to a single night. November 24, 1944, the night the B-29 reached Tokyo from 1,500 miles away. That night proved distance could no longer protect empires. Geography no longer dictated strategy. Modern war had taken to the skies, and the world would never be the same. For Mother, the engine gauges glowing red, the storm breaking the plane apart, the oil pressure falling,
the runway sliding under their wheels just as the engines died. That first mission was not merely a strike. It was the opening chapter in Japan's final year, a year of fire, sky, and surrender. The B-29 did not just reach Tokyo. It rewrote the war. It ended an empire. It ushered in the atomic age. And it all began with a bomber Japan never believed could exist.